Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another one of my FutureFight Vanguard series. I know it's been a little while for you guys, and there is tons of stuff I need to catch up on, but I did allude to it in my previous few videos that had some stuff going on. As you guys can see behind me, I'm in a new location. The location where I currently am, I'm going to be for a while, so I am finally able to settle down, get back on my video grind. But yeah, I just want to apologize to you guys because you guys are the one that suffers, not me, when I don't make videos. So yeah, I just wanted to apologize to you guys. Thank you guys for supporting me so much, and I've just continued to gain subscribers even though I haven't been making content at all. But yeah, we are back with our content now, so that's not going to be as much of a problem. I did get a new job as well. My job works out with my video schedule and all of that stuff. So yeah, it's going to be a good ride from here on. But basically, if you can believe it, I haven't done a FutureFight since before I went to Japan. So we're going to get back on those. Should have a 1,000 subscriber celebration video coming up soon with like a contest. If you guys want to give some suggestions of what I should give away during that contest, you can message me on my Facebook page for the channel or message me on YouTube. I kind of have an idea of what I want to give out already, but in case you have an idea and it's something that I haven't already thought of previously, just let me know. But yeah, like I said, we're going to be getting back into our FutureFight series. Today, we left off with the the G-CB06 Messiah deck. I know that a lot of you is like, oh, this is in the past now, it's not relevant, but I do want to leave like a record for previous decks, like how they were, in case older players want to watch until the present to catch up or whatnot. I also should have a video soon talking about all the new stuff of Vanguard and what I think about it and what I will be doing after I come to a decision on that, so you guys don't have to worry about that either. But yeah, like I said, we left off with CB06 Messiahs, so next we are moving on to CB06 Chaos. I want to thank my friends that helped me for playtesting this deck. It is an old deck, so not as much time to playtest it. But yeah, we'll go over the deck list here. We're going to flip all of our G units as usual, face up. And then we're going to get right into the main deck. So in the main deck, we run 7 grade 3s, starting with our new grade 3 from this set. We have 4 Star Vader Chaos Breaker Crisis. It has 2 abilities. It is our main ride target, but its 2 abilities is the first one is when it's placed on the Vanguard circle, or when you stride a G unit with Star Vader in its name, you can counterboss the Star Vader. So all of that stuff is very specific, which is why it's important to run all Star Vaders or mostly Star Vaders in your deck. I've seen some people running non-Star Vader PGs, and I just don't agree with that. But I think that you should run all Star Vader cards in this deck because, like I said, this deck is very Star Vader based, and it has some abilities here and there that require you to have Star Vader name in the cards. So you counterboss 1 Star Vader when it's placed on the Vanguard circle, or when you stride, which means that if you're striding and placing this on Vanguard circle in the same turn, you can counterboss 2 to lock 2. But if you pay the cost at lock, you choose one of your opponent chooses, and they lock one of their cards. So it's kind of like, I like to say that it's like a combo starter. Kind of gets your combos going with this deck, as a lot of the cards in your deck already have to have a unit locked on the board. But yeah, it gets your combos going. And then the second skill is when your opponent's locked card is unlocked, then if no unit was retired this turn, then you can retire one of those unlocked units, and if you do, you draw a card. So kind of keeps your hand consistent, helps you retire your opponent's cards, etc. For the second backup grade 3, we have 3 Star Vader Chaos Breaker Dragon. This is our original Chaos Breaker. We don't want to ride this as much. It is literally only here for the Chaos name, and for the fact of if we can't get to Crisis, we sadly will have to ride it. But it also works well with our Stride Fodder, which is Penrose Gate, which helps us search for a Chaos, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So Chaos Breaker has 3 skills. Chaos Breaker Dragon, that is, not Chaos Breaker Crisis. Has 3 skills. The first one is the Limit Break 4. This says during your opponent's end phase, when one of your opponent's locked cards is unlocked, you can Soul Blast the Starvader, retire that unit, and draw a card. So some key differences between Crisis and Dragon. Dragon, if you're Limit Break 4 and you have multiple cards in your soul with Starvader in the name, Dragon at the end phase can retire multiple cards and draw multiple cards. Crisis can only retire draw 1. However, it can retire draw 1 whenever a unit is unlocked, so it doesn't have to be the end phase either. So if your opponent uses a skill to unlock their cards, you can proc Crisis off of that and kill that card and draw. So that's kind of useful. I hate that it's once per turn, but it would be way too broken otherwise. So yeah, that's very useful. And then Chaos Breaker Dragon's second ability is kind of like a downgraded version of Crisis's first ability that says main phase. So first of all, it has to be main phase, which means you don't get any benefit off of striding upon this card besides of the Chaos name. But you during your main phase, you can counterblast 1, choose a card with Starvader in your hand and discard it. And then if you do, you choose one of your opponent's rear guards and you lock it, and that this ability cannot be used for the rest of the turn. So it is once per turn. It allows you to lock a card should you ride degree 3 first, but besides that, this all the abilities on this card besides the Limit Break 4 are pretty useless. The third one is the Lord ability, which says if you have a unit without the same clan as this unit, then this unit cannot attack. That will never be a factor because we are in the clan fight format currently, and that requires you to play cards of all the same clan. So this is basically back then just preventing people from building decks that building decks with strong cards like this that would have different clans in them. So yeah, moving on to our grade 2s, we do have 12 grade 2s. We are going to be running 4 of our Strange Dragon, another new card to come out of this set. I think this card's really awesome. A lot of people don't like it. I personally like it because I think that if you can keep making your opponent lock cards from their hand, but also you're making big columns, you're doing it right in Chaos. When your opponent makes you lock cards from your hand and they have like little columns, you don't really care about anything but the Vanguard, which makes things very helpful for your opponent. Like they just have to PG and then just be okay, have like a 5k here or there. And so Strange Dragon kind of like gets around that a little bit. And it has 2 abilities. So the first one is when it's placed on the rearguard circle. If you have a Vanguard with Chaos in its name, this unit gets an ability for the until the end of the turn. The ability that it gains is when this unit attacks or boosts. That's right, people, it can boost. When this unit attacks or boosts, if it is an attack that a Vanguard is being attacked, so you have to attack Vanguard to proc skill, basically. Your opponent chooses one of their rear guards and locks it. If he or she could not lock a unit, meaning that doesn't mean that this skill is optional. That means that you attack with this card and your opponent locks a card. If all the units they have are locked currently, or they have no units on the board, or they have no more units that they could lock, then this unit gets plus 5,000 power until the end of the battle. So that's pretty awesome. Almost made me want to run stand triggers in this build, just because like the turn that this gains this would be so awesome with stand triggers, but I decided to opt out of running stand triggers. In Japan, they did have some builds here and there that ran the Disoprian stand trigger. Sorry if I'm butchering that name, but you guys know what I'm talking about, the Starvader stand trigger. And then its second ability is Generation Break 1. If your opponent has a locked card on the board, then this card gains boost. So even though it's a grade 2, it can boost. So after you play it, it's not completely useless on the board. You play it for its first ability, and then after that, its second ability just puts in work for the rest of the game, or as long as it's on the field, which is pretty great. Then we run 3 Starvader Colony Maker. Colony Maker has a placed on rearguard skill, and it is when this unit is placed on the rearguard circle if you have a Link Joker Vanguard, which you always will in this deck, and if your opponent has a locked card. So like I said, it's like one of those combo-y cards where you already have to have a locked card to use the ability. Then you can counterblast 1. If you do, you search for 1 grade 1 or less card with Starvader in its name and call it a rearguard circle. So I really like Colony Maker because it allows you to toolbox out some of your grade 1 choices that we have in here. We have Neodynam, we have Zinc, we have Meta Nax. Also, if you're playing against Gear Chronicle by some chance and Plank Draco Kid gets rewound to your deck, you can go get Plank Draco Kid, you can get Paradigm Shift. So you can do like a lot of you have a lot of different options for shenanigans when you decide to use that card. And I really like that, and that's the main reason why we run it. But yeah, moving on, we have we have three Companion Star, Star Vader, Photon. That's a mouthful. Photon skill is when it's placed on the rearguard circle if we have a Vanguard with Star Vader in its name, which we always will in this deck. And your opponent has a locked card, so it's one of those combo cards I was talking about. Your opponent already has to have a locked card. So basically, like, that just makes Crisis all the more important because it gets your lock started off, and just like you can see, skills like Colony Maker and Photon really really benefit from that happening ahead of time. So yeah, Photon just allows you to lock another one of your opponent's units if they already have a locked card and you have a Star Vader heart or a Star Vader Vanguard. So it's just very good. Helps benefit more locks if your opponent plays more cards. If they don't, you can just hold it until they do. If not, there are other cards to play. And if you really need it, you can just play it down to the field as a 9K. But you really don't want to play it to the field without using its ability, in my opinion. Then we run 2 Star Vader Groberadia. Groberadia, I think in English it's called Globe Aradia. But when this unit is placed on the rearguard circle, if we have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Star Vader in its name, which we always will, except for when we're grade 2 in this deck, if you do, your opponent chooses a card from their drop zone, puts it to the rearguard as locked, and then to the end of the turn, this unit gets 3,000 power. And then if the number of your opponent's locked cards is 2 or more, this unit gets 3,000 more power. So overall, usually when you're using it, it gets 6 because you lock a card right off the bat with 1 card, and then you lock another card with the ability, and if you don't, then it just ends up being kind of meh. Then we have 4 Star Vader Penrose Gate. Penrose Gate is our Stride Fighter for the deck. It has an ability in your hand and an ability when it's dropped for Stride. If you have, the first one is the hand ability, which is continuous. If you have a Vanguard with Star Vader in its name, while you're paying the cost for Stride with a Star Vader unit, you can discard it as a grade 3. And then when this card is discarded from your hand for the cost of Stride, if you have a Vanguard with Chaos in its name, you can actually get more benefit off of it because you can Soul Blast one, and then you can look at the top 7 cards of your deck for a Chaos card and then put it into your hand. So not only does it facilitate you striding more in this deck because you'll always have a Chaos and Star Vader Stride to go into, but it also helps you with Deluge, your newer Stride, that is going to help you your discarding cards cost, etc. Then we have 4 Ironclad Star Vader Thorium. Thorium is going to be our new PG in this deck. It is very, very good. It basically just rewards you for playing the deck well, or at all. But when this unit is placed on the guard circle from a hand, you can pay the cost, discard a card, and then you choose one of your units with Star Vader in its name, and it cannot be hit until the end of the battle, which you guys don't have to worry about that first part, because all of our grade 3s are Star Vader. All of our grade 2s are Star Vader as well. And then if the number of your opponent's locked cards is 3 or more, you can draw a card. So if you have over half your opponent's board locked, you can draw a card off of the PG, which makes it basically a free PG, which is awesome. Then we have our grade 1 tech cards. We have 3 of those, 2 of each. Then we have 2 Abolition Star Vader Neodynium, or Neodynium. Neodynium, what it does is it basically when you're on Crisis, helps you by adding old Chaos skill to it. But what it actually does is when your opponent's card is unlocked during their end phase, if you have a Vanguard with Star Vader's name, which you always will have, you can Soul Blast one and retire this unit. And then if you do, you retire one of the unlocked units that just got unlocked, and then if you retired, you can draw a card. So this allows you to kind of unlock and kill multiple units, which I like personally. If I lock a lot of my opponent's board and they don't have that much hand and I don't want them to get those units back, but I know that I'm not going to be able to relock them next turn by some chance, then I'm just going to use Neodynium to get them out of the way, or to kill them immediately so that my opponent can't do anything that they'd like with them. Especially helpful in like Great Nature when they use like the Otter and stuff like that, that would just bounce back to their hand or do something at the end phase if you don't get rid of it. Then we have 2 Zinks. Confusion Star Vader Zink. What it does is it is basically a Chaos staple card. I do not like running it at 4 because I feel like you soul charge too many important pieces, but running it at 2 is just fine to keep your resources up. If you have a Vanguard with Chaos in its name, you can shove this card into the soul, and your opponent has to have a locked card, which I did not know for this, but yeah, your opponent has to have a locked card for you to use Zinc. But if you have a Vanguard with Chaos in its name and your opponent has a locked card, then you can counter charge 2 and soul charge 2. Do keep in mind that you can just shove it into soul without using the ability. If your opponent happens to not have a locked card, if you just want to use Deluge, like get soul for Deluge or something. Then we have 2 Starvader Metanats. This is another one of our new cards, but another one of our grade 1 techs. I think this card is like really good in pressuring to your opponent because it forces them to guard attacks that they normally would not guard, like Vanguard attack, first stride if you have it. I really like tutoring it out with Colony Maker. Just makes for really good columns. It makes for a 37 with Vanguard, and then they have to guard it unless they want us to have like a huge advantage over them. So the ability is Generation Break 1. When this unit boosts, if the number of your opponent's locked cards is 2 or more, which it usually will be, this unit gets plus 4,000 power, and then at the end of the battle, if the attack hit the Vanguard that this attacked, then you choose one of your opponent's locked cards, and that card cannot be unlocked, so it'll mega locks their card basically. That really helps in Chaos because it allows you to keep some extra cards on the board, on your opponent's side of the board that are locked for more than one turn, and then when they're unlocking the other cards, you can kill them, and it's easier to get your opponent's board to a full lockdown status if you are omega locking their units at the same time. For our starter, we have 1 Starvader Plank Draco Kid. Plank Draco Kid is our newest starter for the deck. It has Forerunner, as a starter normally does. And then it has an ability that says Counterblast 1 and retire this unit during the main phase. Then you can look at top 7 cards of your deck, grab a Chaos card, which will be our grade 3s in this deck. You grab a Chaos card, and then you can put it into your hand, shuffle your deck. And if your opponent has a locked card, then your opponent chooses one of their rear guards and locks it. So it has a dual purpose. You can use it during the early game if you don't have a grade 3 in your hand. Functions like a really good grade 3 searcher because it's top 7 and not top 5. If you do have a grade 3 already, or you do have a grade 3 in a stride fodder, I like to keep it for a little of the mid game so I can lock my opponent's board out a little bit. That's very helpful. And then for our triggers, we run 8 crit, 4 draw, 4 heal. We run 4 of the Magnetar Hedgehog. That is one of our new crits. It's just vanilla, doesn't do anything really, except for being a crit and being a crit with a Starvader name. Our crit that's a staple is Starvader Paradigm Shift. What Paradigm Shift does is if you have a Vanguard with Starvader in its name, you can put this card on the top of your deck, or you can put it on the top of your deck regardless if you have a Starvader name or not, but it only gets the skill if you have a Starvader name. So if you have a Starvader name, your opponent has a locked card, you can choose one rear guard in your opponent's your opponent's back row and lock it, and then shuffle your deck. This allows you to get more triggers back in your deck, lock more of your opponent's board, control them more, shut them down, so that you can start to reach your win condition. With this deck is pretty much locking them out fully. And then we have 4 of our new draw trigger, which is Quark Shoebill. Quark Shoebill puts this card, or it puts itself in this hole. You choose one of your units and it gets plus 3,000 power. It's very, very good for pumping your units, gets you soul for like your plays like Deluge and Glue Ball, and it just overall just helps you. It's a draw trigger, so whenever you check it, you're going to draw a card, so it's very good. Then because this is before like we get our newest heal trigger in the I think it's the Stargate set, we're running the 4 of the Starvader heal that came out in this set, which is Aether Looper. And yeah, moving on to the strides, we have 2 Death Starvader Chaos Breaker Deluge. Deluge's skill is Generation Break 3. So a lot of people get this confused with like flipping a card in your G-Zone, etc. You have to be Generation Break 3 when you stride this card, meaning that you have to be on the stride and then you have 2 cards face up in your G-Zone. So when you're Generation Break 3, you can use the ability, which is Soul Blast 1, choose a card from your G-Zone, turn it face up, and then choose a card from your hand and discard it. And then if you have a Heart card with Chaos in its name, your opponent chooses 2 cards from their hand and puts them on separate rearguard circle as locked cards. And then if the number of cards in your opponent's damage zone is 4 or less, then you can choose one of your opponent's locked cards and your opponent puts that card into his or her damage face down. So this is one of our newest powerful cards. Not only does it make you play, make your opponent play 2 cards from their hand, which means that they're losing 2 cards from their hand that they could have guarded with or used otherwise. It does let you choose a locked unit from their board and send it to their damage zone just as it is, which is face down, which is a huge thing because usually when you're dealing a damage to your opponent using a skill, that's a counterblast for them to use. But with Deluge, it is not a counterblast for them to use. So that's really good. It also deals the damage to them without actually dealing the damage to them from their deck, which means that they have no chance to check a trigger or get more powerful from this card dealing damage to them, and etc. So it's pretty much one of the best damage dealer skills in the game. Then we have 4 Death Star Vader Chaos Universe. This is an oldie but goodie. You guys know what this does. You counterboss 1 during the main phase. You flip a universe from your G-Zone face up. If you have a Chaos Heart card, you choose one of your opponent's rear guards without a circle, or sorry, choose one of your opponent's circles without a card. And then your opponent places a locked card from their hand there. And then if you are Generation Break 2, basically, after doing this, or sorry, if you are Generation Break 3, yeah, 3. So the old wording is that if the number of face-up cards in your G-Zone is 2 or more, which would mean including this card on your Vanguard circle, you would be Generation Break 3. So if you're GB3, then you can choose one of your opponent's rear guards and lock it, which is cool. In most situations, if they have a front row unit, it just allows you to lock out their board, or at least their front row attackers for multiple turns. And then you can just swing at them, and your opponent kind of loses advantage while they can't do anything. So it's very good in that way. Then we have 4 Death Star Vader Glue Wall Dragon. This is another one of the new strides from this set. It has an activation skill and a continuous skill. The activation skill is not Generation Break. It is just if you have you Soul Blast 1 and you flip a glue ball, and then if you have a heart card with Star Vader in its name, your opponent chooses one of his or her rear guards for each face-up card in your G-Zone and locks it, which means that you want to use this card more towards the late game. It just becomes more powerful late game, along with the Generation Break 3, which works well with the activation skill. The continuous GB3 is all the units with Star Vader in its card names in your front row get plus 2,000 for each of your opponent's locked cards. So if you're able to lock out their entire board with this card or otherwise, and this card is there, then your front row will get 15k, which is a huge guard stage. It's like 3 guard stages. So in the late game, that's really pressuring to your opponent and could make them lose the game. We do run 1 GB8 in this deck, which is Genesis Machine Deity Ortho Wilder. What Ortho Wilder does is it has an axe skill, which is unique for Generation Break 8. Not that many of them have axe skills, they're usually autos. But this is a main phase skill that you counterblast 1 and choose 2 cards from your hand and discard them. And then for each card in your opponent's damage zone, they choose one of their open circles. And your opponent, or sorry, we choose one of their open circles, and your opponent places a card from their hand there as locked. So what this means is that if you're able to clear your opponent's whole board out, or they're just not playing cards besides when you make them play cards, and then they're retired after that, or if they're playing Pale Moon, everything goes to their soul after, Grand Blue, everything retires, same thing. You're able to just play this on them, use the skill, and make them lock 5 cards from their hand to the board as long as they have 5 damage. So it's pretty good. It's a very late game card. If your opponent has I don't know, 6 cards in their hand and they have 3 open circles, it's still worth using because you make them call 3 from their hand to the field, and then they can't survive really just because you have big columns and you have 3 attacks, and they would literally have to have 3 G guards basically to survive, and then they won't have a hand. So that's a really good card to force the end game out of your opponent. And otherwise, moving on to our G Guardians, we have one of our G Flip Guardian from the Fighter Selection set, which is Demise Lit by Darkness Lacus Karina. What Lacus Karina does is when it's placed on the guard circle, you can counterboss 1 and choose a G Guardian and turn it face up. If you do, you choose up to 3 of your rear guards and lock them, and your opponent has to choose a unit in their back row to match each one that you locked and lock it. This card does not get around resist. There was a huge argument about that in the group recently, so I thought that I'd mention that. This unit does kind of choose in a way, so it does not get around resist because of that. And then it just allows you to stop some of your opponent's combo plays, if they have units like Crayon Tiger or Magnum Assault or etc. that have to be boosted to get their ability. It allows you to lock out their back row before they are able to complete the ability of the battle. So it can save you, the game, especially if you're fighting something like Crayon Tiger or something that's really strong, needs a booster to do it. Then we have 2 Genesis Beasts Destiny Guardian. This basically helps you in the mirror match and not in the mirror match in this deck, which is really good, just because when it's placed on the Guardian Circle, you can choose up to 2 cards and unlock them, and then if you unlock a total of 2, then this unit gets plus 10,000 shield, so it becomes a 36 hit guard. And then if you're against Link Joker, most likely you're going to have some lock cards on your board, so you're able to unlock some of your own board back and get it back. And then if you are not facing Link Joker, you mostly will have some lock cards on your opponent's board, so you can unlock the cards on your opponent's board for them using this ability, and then you can actually proc Crisis to kill. Since it is not during the end phase, like I said, if you're on Chaos Breaker Dragon, you can't really do this, but if you're on Crisis, you can unlock with Destiny Guardian, proc it to kill it, and then draw a card during the defensive turn, which is really good. Sometimes saves you the game. Whatever you might draw might be a really good defensive card. It might save you to live out one more turn and kill them. I've definitely done it in different scenarios. Then we run 1 Genesis Machine Deity Deslegion. We run 1 of this card. It is also a new card from the set, and it basically just says when this unit is placed on the guard circle, if the number of locked cards is 2 or more, you can Soul Blast 1 and draw a card. This card is also good in the Link Joker mirror match, because if they're locking your cards back and forth and you don't have any locked units on their board, it just does say if the number of locked cards is 2 or more. It doesn't say the number of your opponent's locked cards, so you're able to draw if your opponent's locking out your board as well. Then for our last G-Guard, we run 1 Death Starvator Demon Maxwell. Demon Maxwell, when it's placed on the Guardian Circle, choose the unit in your back row, you lock it, and then if you do, this unit gets plus 5,000 shield until the end of the battle, so it becomes a 31k block. So it's a pretty useful card. I prefer not to use that G-Guardian when it comes to the others, but sometimes it does have its uses where you have like your starter on the board or something and you don't care about using the skill and you just need a 31k block because that's the perfect number that you'll be able to block with. But getting right into our games here, we are going to have our first game be up against a Genesis Fenrir player. Again, shout out to my friend for helping me record all these, like long past the format is done with. So he rides, we ride, and we attack. He no guards, he takes damage. He draws for turn, he rides Cajole, and then he decides to call Kotonoha using Revelation and getting a card to Soul Blast and resting his starter. He attacks with Rearguard. I check a trigger, which makes his Vanguard not hit when he goes to do his drive check. I just ride and attack. He takes it. Pass turn over to him. He does not have Fenrir in his hand, which I thought that he did, but he does not have Fenrir in his hand, so he just decides to stay on K2. And he decides to attack with Kotonoha. I again take the damage, and then he attacks with Vanguard. He gets a Fenrir this time, and I take the damage again, checking a critical trigger, putting the crit and the power to my Vanguard. I ride Crisis, making him lock 1, which is cool. And then I'm using Plank Draco Kid to check top 7. I believe I whiffed, but a good thing about Plank Draco Kid is even if you whiff, if your opponent has a locked card on the board, you still get to lock another one. So then I play Strange Dragon for a little more pressure. I go to attack with Vanguard and he no guards, and I don't check any triggers. So he takes it, and then I am able to just go in and attack with Strange Dragon, and it gets 5k because he doesn't have any cards that I can lock. He goes and rides Fenrir, discards Fenrir to Stride, which is pretty good, because otherwise he would have had a Stride with that Wise Man in his hand, and that Wise Man was pretty annoying this turn. I mean, it wasn't going to kill me, but like it was still pretty annoying for him to get 2 attacks or more while I have one of his front rows locked out currently. So he Soul Blast 3 with Fenrir's skill, then he plays the Wise Man from his hand. He goes in with the Wise Man to attack using the skill to Soul Blast 3. And as you guys can see, I said ill here because I was like, oh, he has Wise Man and Taro in the soul. So he decides to use this grade 2 skill to Soul Charge 2 when it's Soul Blasted out. And then he uses Taro to restand it. I do take this damage hoping to get a trigger, but I did not. And I thought that he was going to attack with Wiseman again here, but instead he doesn't. He just attacks with Vanguard, so I happily PG, or unhappily PG, because I'm like one lock card off from getting the skill to draw. But he uses Ishtar to make Wiseman gain 3, and then he checks another Revelation card and uses Ishtar again to have Wiseman gain 3, and then he's also just ramping up his Generation Break early so that he can go into other things later. He attacks for 21. Thank goodness he didn't check a critical trigger, or rather he did this turn and I wasn't paying attention. So he told me that I had a crit. I said Nani, and then I opted to guard it with the card that draws me a card, so I just would have drawn the same card anyways. So I use Crisis to kill his grade 2 and draw a card. And then I draw a card for turn. I go to Stride using my grade 3, and then I go into Chaos Universe. So this is a kind of good play with Chaos Universe. It's just like if you G-guard before even going to first Stride, you're able to just like lock out multiple cards of the board. Like I have them triangle locked right now just because I G-guarded there, so that was pretty good. Then I play a Strange Dragon. It gains 5k when it attacks because it was played this turn. The other Strange Dragon will not gain power unless I check a trigger though, which is kind of unfortunate. I wish that it was a continuous skill that it had all the time and not just the turn that it's played, but maybe that would be too strong in Bushiroad's eyes. But he does G-guard my first attack. The second attack, I attack him, he no guards, and I check 3 non-triggers, so it deals 1 damage to him, and my other rear guard can't hit, so I pass the turn. He has to Stride with 2 cards, unfortunately, and he goes into, I think, Vanguard. Yeah, he goes into Vanguard, Vanguard. He Soul Blast 3 with Fender skill and then plays the crit. He attacks with Vanguard, shoves the soul, draws a card, and he draws a crit, which is pretty unfortunate for him. Like, he definitely wants to check triggers during this card skill. But he is Soul Blasting 6 out currently, and then he flips his G unit. He Soul Blasts 4, or he Soul Charges 4 because of the abilities of the cards dropped from his soul. And then I decide to just go in and PG it. No reason to not PG that card. That card is death in a lot of scenarios, so no need not to PG it. He sends all 4 cards to the bottom that he checks, which is very unusual with that card. But then he proceeds to check 3 cards, and one of them is a Dreaming Dragon stand trigger. He tells me the rest of them were a bad check, so I believe him if he put all 4 to the bottom. But I kill a starter with Crisis, and then I go to Stride after drawing for turn and drawing for Crisis. I don't have any counterblast, so I can't go into a second Chaos Universe, and I forgot to flip the first flip for the first Chaos Universe, which is weird of me. But I decide to use Deluge here to Soul Blast, make him lock out some cards from his hand. I also decided to use Penrose Gate to check top 7. I get it, and then I send cards back before I used Deluge. So then I shuffle, I use the draw trigger to get some soul. I'm giving 3k to Strange Dragon, and then I use Deluge to Soul Blast and flip, which I am like astounded that I didn't like notice that I hadn't flipped Chaos Universe when I went to go flip. But he calls 2 to the board as locked, and then I choose 1 card and goes to his damage zone. So that alone killed him out, because I was thinking about going to Glue Ball this turn, but I thought no need to do that when I could just deal him a damage for free. So I do lock his card with Photon, and then I play like double Strange Dragon, which is pretty powerful play. Like, it's basically just like a surefire death type thing. I do attack for 21, to his Vanguard, and I lock with one of the Strange Dragon skills, or the only one that's active pretty much. So he locks it to the board, I attack him for 21, and he just decides to take it, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, he actually does guard this, so he guards with 2 cards. Then I attack him for 35. He PGs it, uses the PG Revelation to shove a card to Soul. And then I told him at this point, I was like, unfortunately, Genesis doesn't have a Were Tiger Jaeger. If they did, that would be broken to use Revelation, shove card into Soul, kind of boss 1 draw. Then I check a crit, a heal, and a draw trigger, unfortunately for him. I mean, he's going to die anyways because he doesn't have any cards in his hand. But that ends up being game 1 for a GG. Moving on to our game 2. We are going to be loading up Chaos 2 at speed 6. So we're playing against the old Nubatama right now, which is old would be set 12. We ride, we go first, he attacks us, he checks no trigger, we take it. We don't have a grade 3 this game, so we decided to use Plank Draco Kid early, and we actually whiff Plank Draco Kid, which is so rare. But then we attack for 9, we check his Stride Fighter, which is good on our path to striding, but we still need a grade 3. He attacks us with his grade 2, we just eat it. We check a draw trigger, hoping to draw a grade 3, we do not. So we just decide to stay on Vanguard and attack for 9, and we check a heal. So we're pretty blessed with the triggers right now. However, we still do need a grade 3. He attacks us for 21. Thankfully, doesn't check any triggers. We eat a damage, and then we stand and draw for turn. I G-assist, and then I check top 5, and there's no grade 3 there. So pretty unlucky right now. Then I just decide to swing again for 9. Yeah, and I mentioned with the new rules, this is where I would get strided on, because he would be a grade 3 at the start of the turn, for those of you who have seen the new rules. Then, thankfully, we checked a Crisis. I didn't even care that I didn't check a trigger right there. I just wanted to check a grade 3, because it's pretty abysmal not being on a grade 3 for that. So then he plays Tamagane Metsu to the field, binds a card, and then he checks a Shiranui. We take a damage, and then he attacks us for 21. We take a damage, and we got a draw trigger, so we draw. All of the damage is actually pretty helpful because we're able to use our counter boss to fully dedicate to locking his board out a little bit. So we used Crisis twice to make him lock 2 cards. I think he thought that it was Deluge, so he locked from hand, but I told him not from hand yet. We make him lock 1 more card. Then we use Penrose Gate to Soul Blast 1, check the top 7 for a Chaos Breaker. Unbelievably, we whiff it when there's still so many Chaos Breakers in our deck. So we go to use the Universe, we counter boss 1, we flip, and then we make him lock 1 from his hand to the front. Then we play a Photon, locking his back row out, and then we play a Strange Dragon to make sure that we'll get that boost. We play a Neodymium to boost the Photon. We use Zinc to shove it into the Soul, counter charge 2, Soul charge 2. We go into attack for 14, gaining 5 because he doesn't have any units that can be locked. We attack for 26, and he G-guards into the G-guard that's going to take our grade 1 from us. So that's a 1 to pass. And then he throws down a 5 for a 2 to pass. We check a Chaos Breaker, a draw trigger, we draw a card, and then we check a PG, which is pretty cool. I'm alright with that. Then we attack for 14. He G-guards this one as well to discard 1, drop 1, and then he also just uses the skill to accelerate his Generation Break. But he uses Obero to make us call Chaos Grade 3 from our drop zone to the field. So I call it, and then he strides and goes into Mugen Lord. He uses Oboro skill to dominate Photon and attacks into my rear guard, which I was going to intercept with anyway, so he just probably decided to go ahead and get that out of the way. And then he Mugen Lords, makes me attack myself, and I guard with 2 cards, and he can't do anything because he doesn't have a board, but I PG and draw a card. He checks a Furai, a PG, and another Furai. And then I retire, he retires, I Crisis, I draw 2 cards, 1 for turn, 1 for Crisis. I Deluge, and I Crisis and Penrose, making him lock 1. I'm checking top 7 for a Chaos, which of course I whip again. And then I'm playing Photon to make him lock his front row. Then I use Deluge, Soul Blast, discard. He makes him lock 2 to board, makes him take 1 as a damage face down. Then I play double Strange Dragon and a crit trigger, shuffling the crit back to deck, locking a card just to make sure those Strange Dragons get the extra pump that they need to be a forceful turn. He does PG us, PG our Vanguard attack, however we check a crit and a heal, giving all power to Photon on the rear guard. Then we attack for 33 with a crit, and he does G-Flip Guardian again. I thought he was planning to accelerate into GB8, but apparently he was not. Maybe he was just trying to like guard himself that time, because he does use the skill, and I do drop a card just to make him guard with 2 more. But he does Oboro, make me call a card to the board, and he goes into Mugen Lord again. This time he uses Oboro to dominate Photon. I just intercept just to have 1 less unit on the board for him to dominate. He does dominate the rest of the cards on my board with Mugen Lord. I take the first one, get a draw trigger, so I'm pretty blessed. And I take the second one, get a crit trigger. And then I just PG his Vanguard and draw a card. So he does check a heal, but because I took 2 damage, he can't heal. And then we start my turn. I Crisis him to make him like kill the Furai, draw a card. I draw for turn. I stride into Deluge again. We use Crisis again to make him lock 1. He decides to go for the lock and draw trigger. We Penrose this time, and finally we get it. They were just sitting at the bottom this whole game. But then we use Deluge to Soul Blast flip, and then we make him call 2. We make him send 1 to the damage zone, which is pretty much like a death sentence because he doesn't have a pity damage. We like to call it that he can take. We send 1 crit back. We attack his rear guard for 9 because we can't really attack anything else, and then we attack for 26. He no guards. We check a crit power to Vanguard, crit power to Vanguard, and a vanilla card, which is indefinitely game. And then going into our game 3. Sorry guys, I misclicked my my thing that opens area. So there we go. So opening up our game 3 here once our area reopens, because the area is stupid and doesn't have a back option. We are loading Chaos 3. This game we are playing against Darkness, the old Darkness. We're starting off the game this time. We ride. He rides and attacks us. Gets a heal trigger. We don't have a grade 2, so we just decided to stay on grade 1. He stays on grade 1 too as a response. I didn't know that he didn't have a grade 2 either. But I'm actually able to draw into a grade 2 and heal. And then he's actually able to draw into a grade 2 too. So the whole time I thought that he was like being grade locked on me on purpose, and he just literally didn't have the cards just like I didn't. But I read Crisis. I used Crisis to go to make him lock card, and I just decided to attack into him. I get a draw trigger, I draw a card. He rides Shara, Vampire, and strides. He goes into Rugarius. He Soul Blasts 2, or he Soul Charges 2. He tries to make me retire a card, but he does not have 4 cards in his Soul with Darkness. He only has 2, so a lot of people miss that part. So he doesn't get to retire. He then goes to call Brennan Vampire and a crit trigger. Then he uses Rugarius to counter boss 1, flip a card from his G-Zone, and Soul Charge 3. The cards that he Soul Charges ends up being Pure Love Succubus, Warrior Tiger Jaeger, and Glinson Vampire. He gets the Glinson in the hand and gives 5k to both the One-Eyed Succubus and Brennan Vampire. He plays that Glinson from his hand to check the top 5. Soul Charge any cards or up to 5 that have Darkness. So he decides to Soul Charge 4 and put 1 to the bottom of his deck, put the remaining 1 to the bottom. So he Soul Charges Glinson, Brennan, and 2 PGs. He decides to use Monochrome here to shuffle his deck, Soul Charge a card, draw a card, unflip a card in his damage zone. He draws into Monochrome again, which I feel like Darkness players always do. But he does Monochrome again, shuffle, Soul Charge, unflip, draw, and then he has Monochrome again after that. But I guess this time he just decides not to use it, maybe? Or yeah, he does use it a 3rd time. Okay. This time he draws into a heal, and then he plays that Serpent Charmer. Okay. Serpent Charmer from his hand. He attacks us for 23. We just decide to, or he attacks us for 33 actually with Brennan's skill. We just decide to eat it. Then he attacks us for 31. We just hope that he doesn't double crit us, and we no guard it. Kind of need to against DI to keep cards in your hand for like their later turns, because their other strides are way more threatening. Then he attacks us for 27, and we just guard with a G-Guard that locks our back row because we don't really care about our starter in this matchup. He goes to use Serpent Charmer. He chooses 13 cards in his soul, and he keeps them, and then he puts the other 2 into his deck. So he has 15 cards in his soul, so he's just going to pick 2 and send them back. And then he also gets to draw a card off of that, which is pretty solid. So he puts back 2 crits, shuffles, and draws a card. Then I Crisis his starter away, I draw a card, and then I draw for turn. I discard 1 to Stride into Chaos Universe. Counterboss 1 with Crisis. Or sorry, I don't Crisis because I'm just going to lock both anyways. So I use Universe to make him lock 1 card to front, and then make him lock the other card as well. I think he thought that I was on Deluge because it was like a long night of playing. But it was indeed Universe, so I just lock out his front row. And then I don't have any attackers really, so that I want to waste and play down to the board, so I just attack with 26. He does go for the PG here with Closet Balloon. He draws a card as well. And then I check a critical trigger, a stride fodder, and a heal trigger. Even though I didn't really want to check those, I just wanted some attacking cards. I do unlock my starter, which is kind of unfortunate because it's just going to die, but he Soul Charges 2, kills my card, and then he goes into Breadamouth. So Breadamouth is like, DI's newer option to fight against Link Joker and cards that, control decks, because it's a restander. So he plays on 3 heals to the board. I guess he wants to put back the heals. He counterboss 1, flips a Breadamouth, and then he puts 2 from his hand into the soul, and then he chooses all the zeros in his soul and field and sends them back to the deck and shuffles. And ironically, I thought I was going to get crit during this restand attack, so I double PG'd. when apparently I didn't need to, because he checks a stand, a Were Tiger Jaeger, and another vanilla, which is Closet Balloon, the PG. And then he attacks the second time I PG, and he just checks into a Tragic Claw. So I was just like, tragic indeed. Like, but I go to kill the Dark Knight of Nightmare Land with Crisis, and he mentions that now I don't like Batman anymore. Trick question, I never liked Batman. It's the Flash all the way. But we stride into Deluge. We use Crisis Skill to make him lock his Glens in. And then we're going to use Penrose, Soul Blast 1, check the top 7 for a Chaos card. And then we put back and shuffle. We go for Deluge here, Soul Blasting 1 and discarding 1 and flipping a card in our G-Zone face up. Then we make him call 2 to the board. He calls a Crit Trigger and a Brennan. We decided to put Brennan into his damage zone face down. We play Globe, which is really going to help next turn with getting 3 cards on his board. He chooses where to lock as well as what he brings back, so he decides to bring back his starter, lock it there. And then we really don't have any more attacking cards. Like I said, we don't have our Strange Dragons this game, Strange Dragon spam, so we just decide to attack into his Vanguard. We do get a Strange Dragon, a Metanax, and a Chaos Breaker. So I was kind of happy for that, because at least I can make like a attack force next turn. He goes to Stride. And I thought he was going to go into Breadmouth again, to be honest, but he actually goes into Gilded I like to call it, or Gilderai, the actual name. He retires my card by Soul Charging 2, and then he plays a crit on the board and uses Gilderai skill to give 10k and a crit, and the other skill that makes me unable to guard with greater 1s or higher, as long as he has 15 or more cards in the Soul, which, as you guys can see, he has way more than 15. So he shoved in the Soul, the crit, to make it 41, and then he draws a card. We have to double G-Guard here, so we do use Destiny Guardian to unlock 2, and then we make him kill 1 with Crisis. I decided to kill the back row with Crisis. Reason being is I realized that I had that Photon in my hand. Next turn I'm going to lock 1 on Stride, and we want to keep his front row locked out, so I decided to kill the back row. So we're guarded for 36 right now. All of our other G-Guardians don't really have real skills right now, so we just guard with Lacus Karina with no skill, and that ends up being a 1 to pass, and then we throw down a 10 more, or sorry, that was a 2 to pass, and then we throw down 10k more for no pass. He does check his stand, he'll stand. So his crit trigger, his lowly 4k crit trigger attacks me for 19, and I'm like, how dare you? So I guard it. I don't use Crisis at the end phase because remember it's once per turn, and I used it during the battle phase of his turn. So we actually go to Stride here with Penrose. And I was thinking about if I wanted to GB8 him or if I wanted to Deluge him, but I figured deluging him for an extra damage would be better because the GB8 doesn't innately deal a damage, so just seems like, you know, that Deluge would be much better in this scenario. So anytime now I decide to Deluge, I promise you guys it's coming. Yeah, so there's my Deluge. I counterboss 1 with Crisis to make him lock 1. And then I play Photon to the board to make him lock 1. I have no Soul, so I shove the Draw Trigger Soul to give Strange Dragon 3. Then I use Deluge, discard the Chaos Breaker in my hand, and flip so that he has to call 2. He decides to call Tragic Claw and Demented Executioner. I go ahead and send that Tragic Claw to his damage zone. Then I attack for 17. He decides to guard with two 5Ks. One of the 5Ks being Listic Vampire, which I actually hate this card because it always saves the Shara player that I'm fighting. I don't know why. But I attack with Vanguard. He's able to PG and draw a card off of it, which is, you know, essentially fine. Then we attack him for 20 and he just G-guards it. He didn't need to, but I assumed that he wanted to get to GB8 or something like that. So, but when he draws for turn, he has no stride fodder, so that kind of sucks for him. He's only able to just play the stand trigger monochrome, soul charge draw, and then unflip, and then he just attacks for 16 with the GB2 of his Vanguard. IPG, draw a card, he checks a critical trigger and a stride fighter, which is what he needed all along to kind of clutch the game, because there's no way that if he was going into a bread of mouth again that I was going to live. But that's kind of like the downside of using bread of mouth at the same time. Like, it fills your deck with triggers, so you only draw triggers every turn, which is pretty awful. But we stride this time into Glue Ball. We re-ride Crisis on Vanguard Circle. And then we use a Glue Ball skill to Soul Blast to make him lock both of those cards on the field. And then our front row gets 6k off Glue Ball's GB3. We decide to play a Strange Dragon in the back row, move our Strange Dragon that's already there to the back row, and then play a Colony Maker just to make some good columns here. We attack for 26. He decides to guard us with 26, which I told him was 26. A lot of people get the stand trigger confused because it is a darkness skill, so they have to soul charge first. So I told him he wasn't dankness. And then he goes ahead and gives me two 10Ks to block with, shoving the soul trigger or the stand trigger to his hand. We attack for 46. And I was pretty sure he was just going to keel over and die, but I think he likes fighting to the end. So he double G guards and makes it a 3 to pass for me. He uses Sabnax skill to get 5k for the rest of the turn. And then I go ahead and check my triggers, or check my dry checks. And then he 3 to passes me, so I check a Strange Dragon, a draw trigger, giving the power to my rear guard and draw, and then a vanilla, and then I'm able to attack for 29. He takes it and eats the damage, and that ends up being game. But yeah, that ends up being game 3, so we were able to win all 3 of our games. But yeah, that was the Chaos Future Fight. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like on the video, helps more than you guys think, and make sure to hit the bell button and the subscribe button so that you can stay tuned with the videos that I'm uploading, and also just support the channel in general, because we all know subscribers equals fame, right? Not really. But yeah, if you guys will, just check my description down below for the social medias. Thank you guys for staying supporting. Like I said, we're back with the videos now. And yeah, with that being said, this has been Josh from Cardfight Empire, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace, guys.